right, Zig coming in at the top of the show. Today on the show we have Alex Hall. You might know him from a number of projects, one of which being Alex Hall's Figurehead, or Oliver Hall, or Summit Sky, or 4 Ohms. All right, this discussion was a good one. Alex and I, and with Sea Level and Oliver Hall and Figurehead, we've ran paths around each other, but I don't think we've ever come head to head. And it was really cool to spend a couple hours talking with him to kind of gauge like the same scene from a different angle. I relate to Alex in a lot of ways with balancing teaching, going to school, and running the band and running the trying to be creative at the same time. It's a lot to balance. It's a great privilege, but also a lot of work and a lot to keep straight in your brain and a lot of people to take care of. So it was interesting. It was really interesting to hear his story. He's got a new album out called Johnny. It's a concept record with a really well delivered narrative. I've like as far as concept records go, this is a really good one. You look at that album cover and you hear the songs on the record, and it puts you directly in that mood. So we're gonna listen to one of those tracks here to start it off. This is "A Dream in a Nightmare's Place" off Johnny. It might be weird hearing a concept record and jumping right in the middle of it, but we talked about this one a lot in the conversation, so I think it's gonna pay off.
I'm falling apart at the seams. I'm drifting away just like my dreams. Fading like a day. I'm falling apart at the seams. I'm drifting away just like my dreams.
Oliver Hall's Figurehead. Johnny, the record, the song was Dream in a Nightmare's Place. Before we get into my chat with Alex, we got to talk about Studio 44. Studio 44 CLE, or Studio 44 Cleveland, is the tip-top prime location you're going to need to make your shit sound good. If you want your podcast to sound as good as this one, or if you have streaming, video, audio, or any type of needs like that, make sure you hit up Studio 44 CLE or Studio 44 Cleveland. You can reach them at studio44cleveland at gmail.com or Studio 44 Cleveland on Facebook. Hit up Jay Sparrow. He'll make everything sound sweet. And also, if you guys can like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast and on the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to super rad people like Alex and sharing their insights with you. Without further ado, here we go. My conversation with Alex.
By the cat tree.
Yep. This is the cat cave.
Right
How's
on.
it
I have
going?
4 cats, so I feel you, man.
You got 4?
I have 4. Yeah,
Nice.
I am a cat dad.
Same. I got 2.
Right on. Where are you right now? Are you in Cleveland?
I'm outside. I'm about 20 minutes out. I'm in Olmsted. It's a little
Okay.
suburb outside of Cleveland. What about you? Where are you at?
Cuyahoga Falls.
Oh, dude, you're not that far.
No, not that.
Nice.
I think we actually must have crossed paths too, because Summit Sky, the bluegrass band I play in,
Right.
was at Negative Space one time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, we definitely did. I booked you guys there. Wow.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's how that happened. Yeah.
Right, because that was for the showcase, and I can't. Was it you guys
Yeah.
in Swamp Meat? Is that what, or was it you guys in Maggie May?
I can't remember. It's honestly anything pre-pandemic now feels like it was a million years ago. So like I'm not really sure.
I feel it.
I remember it being really cool, honestly, and I don't just say that. It was a really cool experience because at that time the band was really new and we were just kind of trying to do anything, and it was a really just an awesome space to be in. People there who really appreciated music, enough to seek it out. So it was just nice to have a little audience of people who cared, and that band's still going on. So
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate that. Negative Space has this weird, and it's unintentional and slightly intentional. This weird way of starting, being everyone's first stop in the chain of things. Does that mean, a lot of people will, first gigs will be there, or first art showings will be there, and I don't, it's not intentional, but we seem to get that and embrace it at Negative Space. It's really weird, but it's cool because, not everyone has that place that they can go, and Negative Space is this amazing atmosphere. You've played plenty of gigs in all your projects, and
Yeah.
likewise, and I like playing venues like Negative Space because of what you just said. Everyone's there for you, for musically. They're there for what you're doing, and it's
it's not about scene. It's not about clicks. It's like I say, it's an art gallery, and music is art, and it's a place people go to appreciate art and for the sake of art. So that's really important to me as an artist, meaning musician. But I think just in terms of culture,
Right.
we need that kind of thing,
Definitely.
especially right now. So yeah.
Yeah. How's it been? How have you been holding up?
Well, I guess about as good as anybody. Pre-pandemic, so I was teaching at Kent State.
Oh, cool. What do you teach?
I teach English. Well, I don't
shit.
anymore. I in 2013 I got my PhD at Kent State in English, and I
Congrats, man.
was teaching basically from the time I graduated with my undergrad in 2007, all the way up until I got my PhD in 13. But there was really no difference between the teaching I was doing while I was still a student and the teaching I was doing after I had my degree. So it was pretty seamless. I kept teaching all the way through to, until last semester or the spring semester of 2020. Shit hit the fan in March, and I finished out that semester online, and then I decided not to go back.
Right.
So I was actually door dashing, man, and doing like
Yeah.
side hustle stuff. Um, and for obvious reasons, that was busy. Um, my wife was working from home, and she got let go after about a year, just because of there not being a need for her because of the pandemic.
What she do?
Um,
Same type of teach?
just kind of an office job, yeah.
Okay.
She's an office manager, kind of like the person who runs the show behind the scenes, sort of thing.
That they're
um,
important.
yeah, and so that actually happened in October. So we had just kind of been like living the we have twin daughters who were sick, so we had been living the educate your kids at home, work from home life from about March through to October. She lost her job. She picked up a temp job that went away pretty fast. And then I was lucky enough on February 1st to start a new job in government. It's had its ups and downs like everybody. But we have not had any like major struggles as far as putting food on the table or anything like that. Lucky for us, because a lot of people have. And Cuyahoga Falls is a reasonable community in terms of like the cost of living and stuff.
Yeah.
We own our own house. I mean, so I guess I would say the things that have been really difficult have just been like not being able to play shows, not being able to like get together with our friends, not being able to like go out to a restaurant, those kinds of things. So they don't seem like a big deal, but like taken together, they do have an impact,
Definitely.
So
Well, that's the culture of normacy. You know what I mean? Like normally, what do you when on a date? What do? You go eat. You know what I mean? You sustain life. We do this in this place. Like it's interesting when you take all that away. Like it's cool that you. I mean, congrats on getting your PhD. That's a big deal. And owning your house. And twins,
well, we
man.
don't own it outright. The bank owns it. We just pay them. But
But you know what I mean? Like those are big steps, and that's a lot of stress when you got to cover that. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Now, the gig you got with the government, are you teaching, or is
No,
it
it's
just
not a teaching
okay?
job. It's communications
Okay,
basically. So yeah, I'm real happy there. I've done a lot of stuff like volunteer wise in my community, and made a lot of like good connections that way, and I guess just showed the right people what I was capable of, and got their trust so that I could find myself a position that was suited to my talents,
yeah,
or at least some of my talents. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad to be there. I've only been doing that for about 2 months now, but it's kind of turned my world upside down because, like, I mean, you're a musician too. Like,
yeah,
you get to a point where you look around and all your friends are like married and have like regular jobs and like kids and all that stuff. And like, I had like done the marriage and the kids part, but I did it like we didn't have kids. I'm 40, so we had kids when I was 34, and my wife was 39. And most of our friends by that time had kids like long
right.
before that.
They're like,
It's like I know people who are my age who have kids that have graduated from high school. Like, it's just crazy.
it is. It's weird to have like the. Well, how old are your kids now?
They're six
6. Okay,
twins, yeah, both twins.
twins.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's. It's weird to see like this constant reminder of how old you are. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Based on how old they are, but that it's
Well,
it
that was the thing, was that I never really had like an adult job, because being a
right.
musician, it was like when you're a musician and you're trying to work, it's like you have to put all this effort into it, like every minute, like you're on social media, like pumping up your show and trying to get another gig, and at the same time like rehearsing with your band and writing new music and doing all that stuff. And it's like it's a hustle all of its own. People don't realize like how much really goes into being any kind of an artist, but a musician in particular, when you have to like put on events like every week, sometimes a couple times a week, booking gigs, all that stuff. And so I never really had like what I consider to be an adult job. So now here I am working a Monday through Friday normal kind of gig, And it's new to me, and yet everybody around me who works there is just kind of like, yeah, this has been our lives for 10, 20, 30 years,
Right. But
So,
that,
yeah.
in a way, that kind of seems like it would make it fresh. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of,
Mhm.
like, because my day job's pretty rad. I'm a music teacher, right? So
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
to, like,
I've been listening to the show.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. But,
Yeah.
so, like, I get to have fun doing my gig, and then, like, but it encompasses everything else outside. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to go in and teach something I don't know how to do, or I wouldn't teach it the wrong, I wouldn't teach something just for the sake of teaching it if I didn't do it. And, like, so in this way, I get to have, like, this adult job and, like, get the adult benefits of stuff and have that Monday thing and, like, Monday through Friday thing where you're in there. And, like, but the whole reason I'm bringing this up is, like, there'd be times where I'm like, man, it might be cool to not have to always be stressed out, even though it's all this fun. Like, you got to come up with everything. It's like you got to prep. All this stuff goes into the gig, just like everything goes into the lesson. And, like, from teaching on your end, how much BS you have to do just to teach the lesson, and, like, which is needed, rightly so. But like, there'd be times there are gonna be some cat sounds probably. There'll be times where I'm just like, man, it'd be sick just to do something where I don't have to think and just do. You know what I mean? And then later,
Yeah.
that's when you do the thing. But I don't know. Like, personally, I find myself, like, if I was in that situation, to be sick for like a week, and then I'd be like, what am I doing with my life? Like,
Well, there's definitely a lot of that second guessing going on. Like, the kind of like rock musician in you wants to like just like tear everything down, flip the
yeah,
tables. But the dad,
right,
the professional, the like all the other things that you need to be to survive, in so many different ways, um, sort of just like takes over. And I don't know, man, it's different because like I remember when I was like probably 20 or something, I did an internship in an office. Like I was working in a pizza place, and it was a pizza place that had like 40 locations in like the Southwest Ohio area, and they were offering an internship in their office in the marketing department. And I was 20 years old, and I was in college. No, it was actually would have been later than that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I had never had any kind of job like that. I got the internship, and went in there and did it for a couple months, and I despised it. And I sabotaged myself. Like I systematically made myself likable and like did all the wrong things. And when I told them I was going to leave, I think it was a relief for them and me.
right,
And it was all nice. Like everybody was nice about it, but I think it was pretty clear that I wasn't a fit there, and and I knew that I didn't want to be there. So part of me worried that I would come into this experience feeling kind of that way. But what's nice about what I do is that it's kind of a different thing every day. It could
right,
be like using Adobe Acrobat Pro DC to make a form fillable.
right. That's
Or it could be like composing a press release, or something like that. So um, having it be something different every day and coming to the end of the day and feeling like I'd accomplished something is really works for me on like in terms of my work ethic. The other thing though is that like, and this kind of goes off what you were saying a second ago, is that you can really compartmentalize your life so that like when I leave work, I don't have to think about work anymore. And that's new to me because I've never had a job where I could just like walk out of my office and like forget about the job until the next day.
right.
I remember being in graduate school and like telling my wife, like it'd be Friday night, we'd be like watching TV or something, drinking beer, and I'd be like, I feel guilty that I'm not working right now, and she'd
Yeah,
be like, you got to take time off. And I'm like, yeah, but you know
right.
um
That's it.
so
Sorry to cut you, but I
no,
agree
you're
with that
good.
so much that when you work for your own hustle, whatever it is, if it's music or your bakery or your painting, you're painting. That's what you
Hmm.
paint, but
Right.
whatever it is, when you're the press agent, the booking agent, the everything, and, like, everything relies on you. You know what I mean? Like, when you're not pushing that, you're just, especially if you kind of get a dopamine reward out of that type of success. Like I accomplished a thing, right? So much of
Yeah,
like what you learn through that music mentality of putting together your own show, managing your band, like so much of that sounds like it pays off into what you're doing now. Like that's like shit you've been used to doing in maybe a smaller range and like a less professional range because it was all on you, right? So your standards are your standards. But like it's when it gets to doing it yourself, like you feel guilty because there's so much, and when that dopamine spike is that opportunity, right? You're like, oh, the thing, and like you can be like, sweet, I got us a song on a college radio that we are nowhere near, or I booked us this gig. Like these little like mini goals that you accomplish, like make so much sense. If that, uh,
it's I know what you're saying, and you're right. But also like sometimes the thing can end up being as thingy as you want it to be, like as you expected it to be. Like
right, 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 right.
whatever the achievement is doesn't have the same like perks or the same satisfaction that you thought it was going to have. Like I used to play in Oliver Hall, as I think you know, and like I remember we were playing a set at a festival in like North Carolina or something, South
Right.
Carolina, somewhere. And I remember that the band The Works, which is like this huge band in the jam band world, were there. And I knew those guys before they were like the big successful band that they are now. Because I'm from Cincinnati originally, and like Chris, the guitar player from that band, that everybody knows, he's like the Trey Anastasio, the Jerry Garcia, the whatever you want to say, guitar player of that group. He used to come see bands that I was in when I lived in Cincinnati
Oh no shit.
before he was even in a band. Yeah, and
What were
then
those bands?
they had Four Ohms was the main one in Cincinnati. We were called Four Ohms. We released one album. We were together from like 99 to like '04. And had a fair amount of regional success. We released one album that's like a beloved Cincinnati rock album.
Nice.
So if you go to Cincinnati, like the guy who runs sound for the Rumpke Mountain Boys, or at least who used to a long time ago, used to always play our record like on their set breaks and stuff. And every time he would see me, he'd be like, "Man, I still play that album." Um, people down there love that album, and so Chris would come out to see like the Magi, which we would play with. Sometimes they were out of Dayton. Dayton's only like 45 minutes from Cincinnati, so we had like some crossover and stuff. So he would be around for some of those shows. Canal Street Tavern was a really cool venue we'd go to, and he'd show up there. And then he had other bands that he played in Dayton before he met the guys that eventually became the Works. Well, two of those guys were brothers, these Greek dudes named Norman and Dino Dimitriolaus. And Norman and Dino had been in the Magi. They kind of had started the Magi. So Four Ohms always played with them and whatever. So when Norman and Dino ended up in the Works, like I was able to like get in the show, and sometimes we even opened for them, and like I would hang out. And I at one point sat in with them on a Halloween show that was like wall to wall at the Beachland. I got to sit in on one of their songs. It was awesome. Just really nice guys too. Dino eventually left the group, and Norman unfortunately passed away some years back. But I remember seeing Norman at the show in the South one time. He was packing up his keyboards after set. They played this monster set with like 1,000 people watching, just like everybody hanging on every note. And they got done with their set, and Norman's packing up his gear. And I walked up and was saying hi to him, and he looked at me and he said, "Man, no matter what level you get to, no matter what you think the big next step is, it's never going to be the release that you think it is." And what he meant was like, you're never going to play a show that's going to be like the taking off point. He's like, every little thing you do along the way is going to matter to some degree, but nothing is ever going to have the catharsis, in terms of your success that you think it will. Like if you think that playing at this bar on Friday night is going to be the thing that really gets you where you want to go, it won't be, but it's a step on the ladder. And
Gotcha.
I think that's kind of what I mean when I said like it. Sometimes the thing isn't as thingy
Yeah.
as you
As
it's
you
going to be. You know? It's like yeah, you achieved the thing that you thought was going to be what you needed to do to get to where you wanted to be, but it ended up just being like one, section of one rung on the bottom of the ladder.
Right, right. Well, no, that makes
Yeah,
sense because success, like if you would measure it's perseverance that equals success. Like the longer you keep at a thing, the more
totally.
success you would see, especially in the jam band kind of realm. Because there's so much and so many different like subsects of it, right? Like,
Yeah,
and it's cool because it's so flexible. It can happen anywhere, and that crowd for the most part seems to be welcoming. Like I don't really feel like age
they're
is a
down with whatever. Yeah.
yeah, age isn't really a factor, and like, I mean, I could be
Unfortunately,
wrong.
sometimes like quality of product isn't a factor either.
Right,
Like,
right. Well, there you go. Like, if
like
you,
it sounds totally shitty, but like, we've
no,
all seen a really shitty jam band at a festival. Like,
and we've probably all been there. No.
yeah,
But
I've
no,
certainly been in them too. Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting because like it's vast and welcoming, and but it does allow that, and like I don't know. So you know when you're in that scene and you're killing it because you can gauge the response. It's the typical response. But if you
Yeah.
don't get that response, then you're like, oh fuck.
Right. Yeah.
But
Because they're not afraid to like whoop and
yeah,
holler whenever you're crushing it. Yeah.
but
And I had those moments. I mean, when I say like, sometimes the bands are not good bands, like,
right,
and I say I was in those bands, it doesn't even necessarily mean that the band I was in sucked. Maybe it did,
right.
but it's more likely it sucked that night. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the other thing with jam bands too. It's so it can be an amazing night or an awful night because a lot of it is improv, and like which is totally cool. But if someone's not if the drummer's not listening, and when you typically know we're gonna go change a groove or whatever, and he misses it, or if you hit your pedal wrong,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like so much of that can change the vibe of a thing and crash it because it's such a special thing being captured already. And like jam band fans know that, like they take in what's happening in the moment and realize this is like happening now. That's I guess maybe like the magic of the jam band realm is
yeah.
taking
There's
in
this sense. I mean, I'm like pretty far outside the jam band scene now,
right,
um, but like there was a sense that like if you were at a Fish concert, like no matter what city it was in, what part of the tour it was on, there was this sense that like you were like somehow a part of rock history for being there that night when they played that song and had that particular jam,
right,
or that guest musician come out, or that cover that they'd never played before, or
yeah,
the longest ever you enjoy myself ever was. Um, you felt that way, and that energy really translated. I read this really cool book. It was written by the guy who runs the AV club for the Onion.
okay,
Um, and it was called "You Don't Know Me and You Don't Like Me." And basically, the guy spent a year following ICP
yeah,
and Fish,
okay,
and like basically his assessment came down to like there being like a family vibe amongst all these people, but he really got turned on to Fish, and it was largely because he embraced drugs. And like I know that's a cliche to say like jam bands are drug music, but like even when I was in jam bands, like I used to call it drug music, and I wasn't doing drugs. Like I mean I certainly like used to be young, but like
right.
at the height of Oliver Hall, for instance, like I didn't do really any of the drugs, like like beyond like drinking.
Well,
And even then, like I was like, I can't have too many before I start because I gotta, you know. So I mean, that was real. Like that, like he became as enamored with Fish and its vibe as he did. He admits in the book because of the drugs. Um, but sometimes that enhancement of music really says more about the drugs and the people than it does about the music.
right.
Um, so I don't begrudge anybody like being young and having fun and enjoying life and music and stuff. Like, do your thing. But I just have since kind of like moved away from it. But you're right. I mean, it's a lot of improv and it's a lot of it's really. I used to describe being in a jam band as being like you know, like jazz with a rock framework,
Right.
you know. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And the best jam bands seem to be the ones that are comprised of dudes who could play jazz, you know, in another band that same night after they leave the gig, you know.
Definitely.
Like Figurehead, that band. I mean, I call it Alex Hall's Figurehead now. There's a history we can talk about if you want, but like at a certain point, the live group Figurehead had musicians that came out of Dana School of Music in Youngstown who were like top notch, man. And like if they had like left me at the gig and gone next door, they could have played a jazz set and like blew everybody's mind, you know. And their ability to do that, I think, was what made Figurehead so good, and what really gave me a lot of the inspiration to make this band what it became,
Right.
and what it like has lived on as, you know, as basically just like my personal outlet for music. So
Well, the Figurehead, the band is tight, man. I've been trying to do a deep dive on everything, and I've been going through all the Figurehead records
okay,
and the Oliver Hall records. So let's take a step back. And what got a guitar in your
sure,
hand? When did this all start? When
yeah.
did music become a thing for you? A way to express.
Um, so when I was like in kindergarten, it came to my attention that there was a guitar in my house,
Right.
in a closet in
Oh
a
shit.
case with a
In
book.
kindergarten, fuck. Okay,
Well,
that's awesome.
and so I just was like, you know, it was like I'm 5 years old. I'm begging my mother to let me play the guitar, and of course, being 5 years old, she's like, "You're not going anywhere near a delicate, expensive piece of musical equipment." But after a lot of haranguing, she eventually would like let me play with it under strict supervision. And as time went on, you know, there was less and less supervision because I could be trusted.
Right.
I could read, so I could start to like read the book and like learn the chords, and you know, and when I was just before I started the fourth grade, we moved to a new city. We could like I was born in Hamilton, which is like close to Cincinnati,
Okay.
and we lived there until I was like in like halfway through kindergarten. Then we moved to another part of Cincinnati, and then I finished kindergarten. We moved to Washington D.C. My dad was involved with a veterans organization who he worked for. They wanted him to work out there, so we moved to D.C. We lived there for like 2.5 years, and then came back and had to live with my grandmother for like the end of that school year, at which point my dad found a job and we bought a house. For the summer between my third grade and fourth grade year, my brother, who's 4 years older than I am, and me were in this house by ourselves every day with our parents at work.
Mm.
And my parents had a collection of vinyl that they never touched. I mean, it almost seemed as if some of the records had come to them, you know, because somebody handed them to them and they never even listened to. I'm talking Led Zeppelin 3, Magical Mystery Tour, LA
Nice.
Woman. They had like the Woodstock album recording. They had a lot of shit also, like that I would never touch. But they had many just fantastic records. I remember listening to like Iron Butterfly and like all kinds of stuff. And that was like, okay, I know I have this guitar. I want to be able to do that. So I need lessons. And then, let's see, if I was in the fourth grade, that would have made it 89. So it wasn't too long after that that Nirvana became a thing. And at that Nirvana, before they got, I don't know how old you are, but like before Nirvana got to be like the international superstars they were like the Beatles at one point.
Right.
Before that happened, they were on Headbangers Ball
Oh shit.
every weekend on MTV.
Yeah.
It was like they were playing Smells Like Teen Spirit. Yeah, they were playing Smells Like Teen Spirit on Headbangers Ball next to Slayer and Sepultura, and like I mean, it was like Megadeth's Hangar 18, Injustice for All, like one, you know, War Ensemble by Slayer, and then like they would play some of the like lighter stuff, which at that time included Smells Like Teen Spirit. And my brother and I liked the song, and of course, as everybody knows, it just blew up. So, with a combination of like that summer of listening to records, and then Smells Like Teen Spirit blowing up, me getting into Nirvana, it was like, okay, I want real guitar lessons. So for Christmas one year, my mom got me guitar lessons. She prepaid 4 of them. I remember they were They were $17 for a half hour at
Okay.
that time.
Huh. It's
Which
fairly
is not that
affordable.
much less
Yeah.
than they are now. Yeah.
It's really
Unfortunately for guitar teachers.
right.
And yeah, so I went to a guy named Adrian Martin. He's still out there teaching guitar. He lives in Seattle now, of all things. We were living near Oxford, Ohio, which is where my
Okay.
university is. I don't know why Adrian ended up in Seattle, but that's where he is now. As far as I know, still playing music, still giving guitar lessons. He was my first like real guitar teacher, and I didn't want to learn theory. To
Right.
me, I didn't want to play fucking Three Blind Mice. You know, like it was like tell me how to play Smells Like Teen Spirit. So I basically just learned songs
Right.
with tablature and all that, and I just put it down and picked it up a lot over the years. I think I was in high school when I think I had like an Epiphone Les Paul and a little amp that I sold along with some comic books just for money, stupidly. But I still had the acoustic, same acoustic I had when I was in kindergarten. And I got into Pink Floyd in high school. I learned how to play a couple of things. And I was at a friend weekend, and there was this dude there who everybody saw as like Mr. Guitar Player. Like this dude, like his thing was he plays guitar. And he played "Wish You Were Here" on guitar. I knew the song
Right.
because I love Pink Floyd, but I'd never tried playing it. But because my background was in basically listening to a guy figure out how to play a song so I could go home and learn it,
Yeah.
I had gotten real good at figuring out songs.
Okay.
So right after he played it, I played it, and they were like, "Have you ever played that before?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Whoa!" And to me, I didn't realize that was like a skill that was impressive or anything. It was just how I kind of like would learn stuff by ear and then figure it out and play it. And that's what I did. So shortly after that, I had a couple friends that I played guitar with like regularly. I got into the Grateful Dead, and we would have like acoustic jam sessions when I was like a senior in high school. And I kept doing that. I went on tour with the post Jerry Garcia Grateful Dead incarnations when I graduated high school, and I
That's
picked up
sick.
a couple things on the road just listening to cats out there play, and
Like playing with
um,
them on tour?
yeah, just like
Okay.
people in the parking lot, like just random dudes from. Here's a guy from North Dakota who's
Right.
on tour with the Dead and has got his own guitar thing going on, and he showed me something, and
Oh, that's
um,
sick.
and then like I got into Fish um, when I got back from that first tour in '98, and I started seeing them a lot and getting into their music, and yeah, and then so like I say, sometime that I think that summer there was like a keg band, that's what I call it, keg band, and we played all the parties that the cops would come and break up,
Yeah.
and I played
That's what.
bass in that group.
Okay.
Everybody's played in that band, right? Everybody's been in that band at least
Yeah.
one time in their lives,
As
right?
far
The gig band.
you got the gig band, you got the bass gig. You know what I mean? When you play guitar, you have to do your time and sit on the sideline for a minute.
Right, yeah. Well, and I started playing bass in that band solely because nobody else would. It was
Exactly.
like
You do your time.
somebody could play drums, somebody could play guitar, and I was like, well, I mean, I could play bass, I guess, and that's I probably played with a pick, like I know professionals do that too, but it's just like using guitar technique to play bass, um, and that band eventually like morphed into a bigger band, which morphed into an even bigger band, which became like the Four Ohms that released Big White Truck, the album, and um, but I really wasn't that great of a guitar player even all that time. I was all rhythm, I was more of a lyricist and a songwriter than I was, like a principal, like a lead singer or lead guitar player or anything like that. And so I just really developed my take. By the end of Four Ohms, I was starting to write songs that were more complex because I was writing on a piano and wanting to play more like guitar solos and stuff. And when Four Ohms broke up, basically just due to some sort of just apathy, really,
Right.
from some of the members, which you just have. Um, I had a band for a while called Cats Walking Backwards, which was just sort of a holdover.
Yeah.
like, and that I moved to Arkansas when I graduated college in '07. So I guess Cats Walking Backwards was together for like 2, maybe 3 years, and then I moved to Arkansas. I didn't play music at all when I was working on my master's degree.
It'd be hard.
At least not as like a
Yeah.
band. Like I jammed with one guy in a venue one time to support a solo thing that he had going on. That was it. But I missed it so hard. And when I got accepted to Kent State University and made plans to move back here, like I started really researching the scene in Akron and Kent, and trying to sort of understand it, and moved up here. And by winter of 2010, I had a little group lined up playing some new stuff, some old stuff, that was called Oliver Hall. And my brother came up with that name because one of my middle name, I have two middle names. One of my middle names is Oliver.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to be Alex Hall Band, but I kind of
Right.
wanted it to be my thing, you know.
Right.
Um,
That makes sense. I was like, it's there, but where's the play? Okay, it's the middle
yeah,
name. Nice.
yeah. So, I mean, most people up here, at least in that scene, know who Oliver Hall was. We were together. I think the band that most people remember Oliver Hall as really didn't take effect until probably like December of like 11,
Okay.
and then by 12, it could have been actually earlier, maybe December of 10, and then by 2012, 2000, I think it was 2012, we were playing in Colorado, and we ended up playing like 20 plus states and like really
That's
doing our
sick.
thing. And
Yeah. Road
it was,
dogging.
yeah, I still really think of it as like a rusty jam band, like not rusty in like a like unpracticed way, but
Right.
like a rust belt jam band. So
Okay.
we were a little grittier, and like you had maybe was it you that had Road? No, it was a different show. Since you had Matt Rhodes on from Tropodelic, I think.
Oh no,
And
I had Rhodes. Rhodes was
oh,
on
was
here.
that was
Yeah, yeah.
you? Yeah. I mean, I sat in with them a couple of different times over the years. Like, you know, Rhodes, very, very dedicated musician. His attitude about using whoever you could find, regardless of their ability, I was sort of the opposite of that. I really wanted guys who could play.
Right.
Um, I was really focused on the music. I hated playing the same set, the same songs every night. I didn't want to be involved with the business at all. Um, I wanted it to be really a secondary thing to the music, but when it got to a certain level, it was just like all we could think about was like, you know, contracts and tour dates and managers and like, and we were really low level still for that to even be the case, which means it was just going to get worse.
Right.
There were politics, you know, in the band and surrounding the band that were just making me like squirm. And you know, in hindsight, a lot of the issues that the guys in the band had with me were legit, whereas I think a lot of the issues I had with the band were also legit. I'm on good terms with everybody now, but I ducked. I just out. We got back from a Colorado tour, and I was like, I'm done. Gotta go. We had released. I had released an Oliver Hall EP before any of those guys were in the band. Then we released.
That was a like kind of live one. Like those tracks were like that was before I'm trying to think of what your first record was called.
First record was Welcome to Oliver Hall.
Right. But
There's
there
a white one that's just got like blue lettering on it.
yeah.
It just says Oliver Hall. That was the first ever like professionally recorded Oliver Hall stuff.
Okay.
And that the only person that was in the band with me at that time, who was still in the band when I left, was me. um, and like, and they were great musicians actually too. But
Yeah, no, the
Spencer
band's
Cutlet
tight.
hung around. Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just saying the band was tight. Did I lose you?
Oh, I thought
Oh.
you said wait.
Wait,
Yeah,
no.
no,
No,
I
sorry.
liked that era of the group. We did a lot more like spacey sort of like out there stuff at that time, and then I just needed people who could like show up at a gig like outside of like a weekly gig in a bar.
Right.
So I went through a couple different members. I ended up with Jim Tauscher, who had tried out for the band at one point and it wasn't able to sort of like commit. He came back. We got a bass player. Same thing happened, but he came back. And then we got this dude named Matt Johnson to come play drums. We knew him as Bones. And And that was a fun little group. We recorded Welcome to Oliver Hall. We added very briefly a piano player named Paulie Silviti, and he jammed with us, and we had that live album, and then we put out Chasing the Rain toward the end, and that's what we were touring
Oh, okay.
when
Okay.
we stopped.
The
Yeah.
kind of I've been thinking about that first Welcome to Oliver Hall. In that on
Mhm.
that record, I keep hitting my mic. Fuck. On that record, on that record, there's like these interludes in between the
Yeah.
WHB, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, what I've been trying to figure out what that connection is because I feel like one's like an adaptation of each, right? Like it feels like it's one groove, and then there's like kind of a
Yeah.
more punk version of it, and then a spacier version.
Yeah.
And this may be me trying to overanalyze it and be like,
No, you're absolutely right.
does it shift
So
keys? Like what's
so look, man, when I would listen to Abbey Road and You Never Give Me Your Money would come back with the orchestra,
right?
it would just chill my spine, like I could not ever. I still just thinking about it. I just am a sucker for a reprise and a concept record. Like The Wall just blew me away the first time I heard it. To have a story go across and Tommy and all that shit, I love it so much. So I wanted to bring the songs together in some way. And so the idea was the IWBH stands for I Wanna Be High. And we had like a we had a we had a funk version of the song that we would play as a complete tune
Right.
live. But on the record, it was like the idea was that like each one of the tunes represented a different kind of like drug that somebody might use, and it wasn't because I was big into drugs, because I wasn't. What it was more like, we could use drugs as an analogy to show how people sort of like,
relate to it.
well,
To-
to show how people sort of become numb to things about society.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, at that point in my career, everything I wrote lyric wise was abstract and political. So it wouldn't seem political to anybody but me, but that was where it was all coming from.
Gotcha.
Like Broken Impressions,
That's a good song.
what, it's like, it's a dystopian thing. Broken
Yeah.
Impressions, Drawn Back Reflections, then Fear. And I'm picturing like some, like Nazi equivalent, like, keeping people down. Haze overhead of rhetoric fed disappeared. Like people
Yeah.
actually like thrown off helicopters like Augusto Pinochet did in Chile, and like all that stuff, just because I was so into history and critical theory and politics and all that stuff. And so that's what that is each one of those represents a drug, the way people use drugs to numb themselves from their everyday lives just as much as they might use other things to numb themselves from things about society and that are messed up or whatever too. So you have I think one of them was real funky in my mind. That was kind of like alcohol, right?
Okay.
And like one of them was real spacey in my mind. That was kind of like some kind of like hallucinogens or something. There's a really really fast one,
Right.
which it would have been coffee because we were drinking Red Bull and coffee and shit, but it was really more like any kind of speed.
Right.
So yeah, that's what that was, and
That's cool.
It was Welcome to Oliver Hall because it was like those guys had been in the band for a while, and I felt like this isn't the Alex Hall band, so let's make Oliver Hall a place, that you can come to and like experience like what we do
Right.
as a whole, to really bring the members of the band in to be an equal part instead of being supporting musicians.
Right.
I was
right.
real keen on that, and that was kind of how that all got together.
Was that culture makes a huge difference with how the band is. You know what I mean? If it's
Yeah.
a hall where we gather to talk about and share where we're coming from, as opposed to like how you're saying, just a supporting of the name, that's completely different. And
Yeah.
that's a really cool play on words too. And I'm trying to remember this whole time you're going for English and you're really in the writing and history and reading at the same time. Like
Yeah.
like I knew those tracks had to be something. I'm like, this no one just does that and has like a kind of a reprise like that without having some type of intent. And like I get with the Figurehead stuff, I see way more of a concept records come together. But before we get to that, like, so there's kind of like these internal politics, and it's interesting that like that kind of dissolved Oliver Hall, right?
Um, oh well, look, I made the decision to leave.
Okay.
I came back from a tour in Colorado that was really difficult. Being on the road is hard. People
Yeah.
think being in a rock band is like all fucking getting drunk and
Having
you know,
fun. Like,
yeah, whatever. It's more like you're getting drunk and doing other stuff to like like hold the like the sort of. I mean, you wouldn't want to like the people in your band become your siblings,
right.
and like anybody who has siblings know you don't want to be around your siblings all the time. If you were around all your siblings all the time, then that would be frustrating. Now, take that frustrating, you know, analogy or hypothetical, and put it in a van. So now that not only are you together, you're together in close quarters, driving across the country, and you're all creative. So you're fighting about what you're going to do once you get there,
right.
to express yourself, and it's just very very difficult. And there's something you said earlier that I think is really true that I want to revisit is the secret to the success in a band is longevity.
Yeah.
Um,
Perseverance. So you just keep on trucking.
Perseverance. I say longevity, but yeah, like
Okay.
both. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter what you do, but the longer you do it, the more likely it is you're gonna succeed. Because, I mean, you look at Tropodelic; they've been around. They were around when Oliver Hall was doing its thing, and before that, I think maybe
Right.
even. Because he talked about being playing at Robin Hood and stuff, and look at them now. They're nationally successful, like getting these collaborations with big artists and stuff, and more power to them.
Right.
And that's where Rhodes is right. Like, you get the people who are driven to do the thing.
Right.
Um, but it was just very difficult. As close of friends as I was with those guys, I also felt kind of far away from them. Two of them lived together. One of them sort of like lived there. He would stay there a lot and stuff. In the end, the four that we had. And I just kind of felt like an outsider. I was married, going to school,
Right.
and all of that,
All these.
teaching. And
Shit. Yeah. That would definitely make those tours way
no,
hard.
it's like it was, yeah. And I basically like coming home from that one tour, like I remember my friend had come with us to be our like road manager, like for sound, like he was running sound at all the shows, and we had a tour manager who rolled with us too. And I was ready to leave like as soon as we got home. I remember we got back and there was like a foot of snow on the ground, and my car was stuck in the parking lot at the person's apartment where we'd left from, and I was just already so frustrated. And my friend, to his credit, was like, "Sleep on it, man." And I was like, "All right, fine." So I did, and I woke up the next day and I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna do that." And then um, just like an hour later, got into another fight with one of the guys in the band over a scheduling thing that was causing some issues at home.
That.
So
Yeah. That.
yeah, I pieced out. I just was like, I ghosted him. I turned off my phone. I told him, basically to fuck off, and
Right.
that I didn't want to be in the band anymore. So that was me. And the reason they kept the name Oliver Hall is because I told them straight up, like, I made the decision to leave the band. I don't want you to play my songs, but I'm not going to tell you whether or not you can use the name.
Gotcha.
It was a dick move. I mean, it was like,
Right.
but I was done. I had to go, and I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you were managing stuff at home and on the road, like
Yeah,
and you're doing a full-time school career and teaching, and
yeah,
like have a stable home life that you have to maintain, like
yeah.
it's a
There was a
real
lot going on. I mean,
right.
there was other stuff too, but it was a lot. It really was. And I mean, I should have known that. It's real easy to like be blinded by your own bullshit and
Right.
look back and realize, oh, I was actually like, dealing with something,
Right.
psychologically that I didn't know in the moment I was dealing with. But,
I mean,
it is what it is.
just with those three things on top of running a tour, and I don't know how much of the booking or how much of that fell upon you, right? How much of all the leadership role did? Maybe it was distributed, but even if you were slightly involved with those four heavy hits, like that's
Yeah,
gonna fuck your shit up mentally because
yeah, it was
it,
tough.
it's tending way too many gardens and like
Well, and being creative too. Like, I mean,
Right.
I like we had Chasing the Rain was like another concept album practically. We had 2 songs on the record that I hadn't written. I really wanted to be able to showcase, the other guys'
Right.
stuff. Um, and I felt like I was trying to like creatively support them, but I wasn't supporting the business, and I was mad a lot. A lot of it was me. I think that I was in the right on certain issues I had, but I recognize that I definitely provided some of the powder for the keg.
Well, I mean,
Um,
and that's huge now being able to look back and see it. You know what I mean? Being able to analyze, it's like listening to a recording of yourself. Like, fuck, I need to punch in here and fix that up. But knowing
yeah,
that you have to do it is a big deal. That's the only way you move from it. And, like, that validates the experience and the anger that you had because you know what I mean? That you realize those corks you had to iron out.
yeah. But I mean, the good news was that like I mean we started this part of the conversation talking about kind of where I came from musically. I
Right.
mean, um, you know, Oliver Hall was fun musically, like playing in that band and playing to a packed house every night. Like when we would play locally and regionally, especially, it was just awesome.
Right.
When we were only playing shows at the Kent stage that were like tons of people, it was a great feeling. It's nothing like it. People who've never experienced like being on stage and having the crowd hanging on your notes, and um, like just being able to stop and kind of like walk up to the microphone without saying anything and have people like shouting and cheering and whatever. I saw Slayer
Yeah.
one time, and Tom Araya stepped up to the mic and was at the Agora.
That's sick.
It's like just everybody just like started screaming, and he hadn't even said anything. He just literally just stepped up to the mic like he was gonna talk. On a much smaller scale, that was starting to happen at our shows, and it was like there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
But around the time we broke, and now Chasing the Rain was, I think, a successful album. I was happy with what we were doing. I felt like we were getting better musically. We were developing a unified sound that I only recognized in hindsight because I was still sort of stuck on myself.
Right.
I don't think I was as egotistical as people thought I was, but maybe after listening to this, people think I am and was and still am and whatever. I don't know. But like, um, at the same time, the band in Youngstown, Jones for Revival, had experienced somewhat of a split. And my friend Dave Lynn had stopped playing with them, and he looked me up and was like, "Hey, man, like, I posted something on Facebook and was like, I'm not in this group anymore. Here's what's going on." And he looked me up and was like, "Hey, man, I want to play with you. Like, let's get something together." And I had seen him play guitar and bass with Jones for Revival, and he was freaking amazing. Well, he's a product of the Dana School of Music at Youngstown State University.
Yeah.
He's like musical royalty in that town. He is a phenomenal musician, and he brought along a bunch of dudes who were fantastic. Tim Wilder, maybe the greatest bass player I've ever played with, probably the greatest bass player I've ever played with, but one of the best bass players I've ever known. And Zach Connolly, who played drums with us, also just a fantastic drummer, product of Dana. Although I don't think he graduated Dana, he was just very dedicated drummer, dedicated to jazz, and just being like the right guy for whatever job he needed. Just crushed it. Jay Stevens, who had also been in Jones for Revival, played keyboards with us at very first. And Dave and me playing my tunes from Aller Hall and making them like so much better musically than I could have ever even imagined, based on the ability I had as a musician at the time. Me trying to build that band up as quickly as possible, because we ended up getting a gig really soon after we formed the band. So, and they were all so good that I could be like, all right, we got a gig in 2 months, but they're going to start promoting it in a month. So we got to get a website and some videos up so that, we look like we're
Together.
a full-fledged band
Yeah.
before, and we did it, man. We had pictures and a website and a fucking I put up a trailer that was like footage of us playing a song, and we really nailed that. And
Having that crunch time makes that stuff
yeah,
cook. You know what I mean?
it does. It really does. Yeah, I've reached so many musical highs with that lineup that it was insane. Um,
when did you call it? So figure this is the formation of Figurehead, right?
yeah, it was Alex Hall's Figurehead at first, and
Okay.
then
Where
just
did
like with, so go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say where did Figurehead come from? Because that makes me think of
Oh,
Fountainhead in a way. Like I don't know, it makes me think of the
figurehead's
irony.
a figurehead's a general term that means like
Gotcha.
somebody who like seems like they're the leader but they're not.
Right.
And like I remember having a conversation with somebody in Albert Hall one time, and them like passively referring to themselves as the leader, and me like joking that they were the figurehead. Um,
Gotcha.
and
Okay.
it was kind of me snubbing my nose at that person, but also I felt like at the same time, like I felt like a figurehead because it was like my group, Alex Hall's Figurehead, but I was so obviously like
Very.
not even half the musician these guys were, and like my strength was the songwriting and the ability to bring people together and like do it,
Right.
and very often that's what happens. You have a guy who's like not actually the greatest musician, but writes good songs and will motivate people to show up to rehearsal and do the gigs, and
That's
that's what it takes,
yeah, that's a skill set in itself. And
Right,
it doesn't like that's something you can't it's almost out focusing. Like you hyper focus on making this condensed narrative and then
yeah,
have to like you know it's opposed to shedding scales and being able to figure out how to make that narrative pop. You're
right,
really like honing on bringing the people. You're orchestrating it. You're you know maybe the figurehead, but maybe the conductor as well.
right. Well, and so Alex Hall's Figurehead like was thought of as being like possessive, like
Yeah.
Les Claypool playing Frog Brigade or whatever, but like it was really more of a contraction. Like I am the figurehead. Alex Hall is
The figurehead.
figurehead.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily like the other band members, although I felt that way. It was more like it was the music. Like, the music was really the leader. I was
Right.
just you know the vessel or something. Like I don't know.
Well,
But I liked the name, and
it's cool.
yeah, we used it for a while. I did do the thing that I had done with Oliver Hall, where at a certain point I felt like I wanted to bring the members of the band in, make it more of a unified effort. So, we became Figurehead for a while. Um, Jay left. Well, we sort of fired Jay. I feel bad saying that, but that's what happened. I still feel bad about that. And I don't think he probably still has quite a lot of animosity toward me over that whole thing. And I feel bad about it, but um, he was such a phenomenal musician. He wanted to play a full B3, and
Oh shit.
I was all about it.
Yeah.
But traveling, it
That's
made
a
it
lot.
difficult. You couldn't make money, and it was just it was a lot. And I knew that going in, and I had assured him that I wasn't going to be that guy, but I ended up being that guy, and I still feel bad about it, but um, there's nothing I can do about it now. So he was out, and then Zach, the drummer, he needed to take off because he was just like kind of going through some changes in his life, trying to figure out how he was going to proceed. If he was going to finish music school, if he was going to do something else, if he was going to
Yeah.
move, what he was going to do. And he ran out of time, so he passed it to his friend Mark Moderelli, who was a phenomenally good drummer as well. So I was really lucky to have him. And Tim Wilderoder, the bass player, and I, we became really, really good friends. Um, and so it kind of we got to this situation where it was like, Tim and me were really kind of the creatives, like we were the songwriters,
Right.
and then Dave was kind of the music director,
Okay.
and Mark was there, doing his drum thing,
Holding it down.
yeah, and man, the music just started to get so good. We actually did have Albert Sandilli come and play keys for a while, but that didn't last. Uh, Bert, he didn't have time, I don't think, to learn the tunes as much. And I like Bert a lot, but we didn't jive really well together for whatever reason. Musically, we could stand in a room and drink beer and talk all day long, but musically we had a hard time. So
It
yeah,
it's weird. It's weird. Like it's this unspoken thing. Like you can be tight with somebody and like not have the same lingo musically. It's a weird
that's true.
engagement. Like that. It's only one way to do it is to jam and find out. But some people can't jam, and there is already what do you mean? There's no structure. What am I supposed to do? Like that's already
Right.
like one of those like lingo
Or it can be
things.
the opposite. Like, I don't want any structure. Like, well,
Right.
you got to play in the chord,
Right. This is the Well, that's the importance of kind of the songwriter, or at least for a jam band, because there is, there's this fluctuation of a piece, but where the resolve is where the tune is, right? So you build up. Typically, a lot of jams will jam into the tune, jam in the middle, back to the tune, jam, and then out to the tune. So the
Hmm.
tune's like the staple of the piece, and if you don't have
It's the
that,
touchstone. Yeah.
it's the touch. Yeah, and if you don't have that, there, it's just it's the air. It's nothing except for where experiencing it, and like,
Yeah.
but that's what makes or breaks certain bands in that type of scene. Like, on a side note, Jones for Revival is great. Me and we played with them for their anniversary thing a couple years ago at the Beachland.
Oh, nice.
Were you playing with them? Like, were you
No,
jamming
I
with them
didn't.
at all?
I
Okay,
didn't.
they were
I
just
didn't.
jamming
I
with
never
you.
played in Jones. I may have set in with them for a tune or something one time, but um, Jim DeCappo was one of those. He's very, very driven.
Yeah,
Um, he's really he takes a lot of ownership over that band, and I got a lot of respect for him. Um, he's just he's Jim. If you know him, you know what I mean.
right.
He's like he's all about music, and he's constantly making music and putting it out there, and he's always got like a new logo and new awesome artwork, and it's just it's his whole life, man. I really respect that he's able to do that. Um,
Right.
I think there was a little bit of like frustration because when Dave left Jones, it was like I don't think they had the most amicable split at first. And then it was like here we were with this band that was like had members of Oliver Hall and of Jones for Revival, and so it was kind of sold that way sometimes, and
Yeah.
people don't like when you do that.
Well, yeah, because
uh,
now I'm not included, and the split with any group is never, it's never
yeah,
clean.
it's
It's like
yeah,
a breakup.
yeah,
It's never clean. No one's ever like, oh yeah, we just came to terms and we're both going away. Like, nope, that's how you're telling your friends it, but that's not how it happened.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, it's. I mean, you're right. Such a cliche, but the analogy really is that it's a relationship, and it is. It's like a very close friendship, and when you say you don't want to be in the band anymore, it's like you're saying you don't want to be a friend anymore.
Right,
It's like
right.
you're breaking up with your friend, breaking up with your band, and it's like it's messy. It's just
Yeah,
always messy. But yeah, I got a lot of respect for Jim DeCapua, and but Dave was in our group, and we started out recording Oliver Hall songs that hadn't yet been recorded that I had written when I was in Oliver Hall, and the first two like albums, right? One was just self-titled Alex Hall's Figurehead,
right.
4 tracks, one of which I think at least was Dave Lynn's tune, that tune Credit Hole,
Oh,
such a
okay.
awesome song.
That is a cool tune.
Yeah. I think I helped him with like a lyric, but that was it. Everything else is like that was his tune. Um, and I was very much on the sidelines and happy to be on that
Yeah,
one because it's such a fucking awesome song. He let me take a solo in it too, which I thought like, wow, man, like because he Dave, like what the hell, like what am I doing playing on
earned the
this? But
spot.
but that was
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, got my merit badge. That's what he said at the time. You get your merit badge. Um, but so that one and then At the Movies. At the Movies was another concept record, kind of based on the idea of Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow, like the
Mm,
people in the theater, like we're all the people in the theater sitting here waiting to all get blown up by, like a nuclear
right.
bomb.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
and that was it was kind of like the way Joe's Garage was like, he's like, how do I make this into a concept album? It's like same sort of thing, like how do I make this a concept album? I
See,
liked how that turned out.
no, it's a sick record. And it's I feel like Zappa, like a lot of your influence, conceptual wise, and like, through Oliver Hall and Figurehead, seems like there's a Zappa, Pink Floyd influence. Like that's
Yeah,
really where like I feel like your writing kind of is at least now. Like maybe Oliver Hall's got a little more Grateful Dead vibe, but these two, like, especially with like Joe's Garage, that's a great example of like at the movies. You know what I mean? Like how to fit this thing in.
yeah. I mean, I was a huge Zappa fan. I discovered him in high school. Um, some friends of mine and I like. got into Zappa kind of all at the same time. We were like big Beatles nerds, and then we got into classical music, and then we discovered Zappa, and like at the same time as we discovered like Stravinsky and like all that weird early 20th century like
Right.
classical or like orchestral music or whatever, and
But the
it
punk
just
rock orchestra, like Stravinsky's punk as fuck.
yeah, it was just like that. Well, just that dissonance, like weirdness,
Right.
like I'm always been drawn to that kind of stuff. Like just anything, the weirder the better for me. I mean, there's a line for me for sure, but like, um, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I just the way that he took like my understanding of Joe's Garage is that like he recorded these songs. They were all just like sort of strangely like related, and he wrote the story of Joe's Garage to bring them together. So it's all kind of like through composed as far as the narrative, but it's a rock opera. And I love that. And with At the Movies, I wanted to do that. I had this idea. At the Movies is kind of funny because I wanted to. I was experimenting like lyrically with some of the stuff I wanted to do for a long time that I'd never been able to do with a band. Um, and like some examples, like I did. There's a tune called what's it called? Oh well, At the Movies itself. Sorry,
Self-titled.
Yeah, that tune is the lyrics are a screenplay.
Oh,
So
okay.
like I say, contestant one, let's start a revolution. If the way I wrote the lyrics is like contestant one is like that's the character's name, and then let's start a revolution is like what that character's saying. Contestant two,
Oh,
you know,
interesting.
everybody knows my
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
And from the audience in destitution, don't tread on me, you'll never have the right. So it's like all this, like it was a screenplay of lyrics. I loved that idea. Aldous Huxley did that in a novel. He had a novel. It was called a novel, but it was written as a screenplay, and I liked that idea. And then uh, like Conspiracy was like I was really into Queens of the Stone Age at the time, and like the song is basically about people who like will accept these crazy conspiracy theories, even though they're insane.
Right. Well, that's more prevalent, I think, now than ever.
I know it's a little prescient there. Time on the Take was like that one's even hard for me to explain in hindsight. But like Birdie, for instance, like I was like drawn to this idea. Like we were traveling down the road and there were like crows. There were like 5 crows flying, and they looked like they were at the same altitude of like 3 little biplanes that were flying in the sky. Like, and I was like, dude, like one of those things flies into the propeller and they're fucked. Right? And like it's just like these crows just flying around going like, we don't care. Like, you know, like,
I don't know what that
and the
is.
planes happen to be like, okay, maybe we should, you know, like,
Yeah,
so so I was really starting to kind of experiment, but
that's cool.
yeah, and then Signs, even like the thing with Signs was it was like like you know how you like drive down the same road every day and then you don't notice the sign, and then one day you're like, is that sign always been there? Using that as an analogy for more concrete things. But again, like those tunes were all like almost all of them had been like Oliver Hall things.
Right.
I mean, some wasn't, but like Conspiracy and Time on the Take, Oliver Hall actually was performing on stage. Birdie, we demoed in a studio before the band broke up, and At the Movies was being played by Oliver Hall on stage too. So that stuff was all kind of like the leftover shit, you know. Go ahead.
I was like, so after that's when the real Figurehead stuff started, I guess. But
Yeah, like
what's it?
start stops.
Start stop. But like,
Yeah.
it's interesting. You ever dive into Childish Gambino? And
Well, I
because of
watched
the internet?
Atlanta, but I haven't listened to
Okay.
the music.
Oh, okay. You gotta check out his album Because of the Internet. Like it's based on his screenplay he wrote,
Okay.
and it's not like the lyrics are a screenplay, but
Uh-huh.
it's all like lined up. It's this crazy in-depth
It's
concept.
concept. Yeah.
Like it's really, and Donald Glover committed 100% to this character. Even like when he was doing interviews, he was interviewing it as the character in the script that you didn't get unless you bought the special vinyl. Like like
I had no idea.
right? No,
I mean,
you wouldn't know, right? Unless you like dove into it.
Well, it's like even like Deltron 4040, like there was like there was like that was like a hip hop like rock opera concept record that
Right.
like you didn't get as many of those things. Even like the Kendrick Lamar To Pimp a Butterfly
Right.
thing, like
Right.
that continuing motif pieces of the
The poem.
interview with Tupac, like that
Yeah.
whole thing. It's just like it gets done all the time, and a lot of people just don't know it, you know.
Right.
And now we live in a culture where nobody wants to listen to the fucking record. What? I'm gonna listen to the first 30 seconds, and if it doesn't grab me, I'm gonna go find something else. Like
Right.
I'm telling them, my newest record, which I hope we're gonna talk about, like
Yeah. No, I was hoping we would get to
45
that.
minutes long. Like, hey, do me a favor, go listen to this 45-minute record. Tell me what you think.
Was it well
Try
on
to
that?
do it all in one sitting if you can.
Well, on that
Listen to
topic,
everything.
that was a perfect segue. I think that Johnny, the newest record you have out, I think as far as a concept and how well written it is, like
Thank you.
it's like top notch. Like
Oh man,
that
thank you
you
so
look
much.
at that album cover and you listen to the first couple tunes and you get this character and the narrative between it and the how you take the jam band essence, right, and place it with the narrative structure, which is depicting this tale of this person you're looking at, and you get this
Hmm.
image that says, I feel the image says more than enough, and the music actually to put you in that mood, in at least beginning and understand where this character is. So where did this come from? Who is Johnny?
Um, well, it's a real guy.
Right.
I was
It has to be. Like,
let me backtrack just a little bit and say,
okay.
like, you know, Figurehead had an album called Carrion that was like our last thing ever.
Right.
Um,
That's kind of
and I had written for the first time a couple of tracks for that album that were not politically abstract and were in fact telling a story. I can't remember who encouraged me to do it, but um, it just started to flow really naturally. So on the Carrion album, the tunes Marquee and Carrion itself were more like, well, Carrion I guess is more conceptual, but Marquee in particular was about a kid I knew growing up who his dad had died. He was in the Navy. He was buried at sea. He had to come live with his mom. They moved or I guess they did live with his mom, but the guy was always out at sea. He died. He was buried at sea. They came back to Southwest Ohio to live, and um, and he was like a couple grades behind. So like he was 2 years older than me, but in my same grade. And he really like we just hung out all the time, like as kids, riding our bikes and just doing like dumb shit, like putting pipe bombs in mailboxes and like just dumb shit that like little like preteen boys might do in the country where there was nothing to do and there was no internet. Like not yet, not really. I mean, it sort of was, but
it wasn't good
um,
enough.
yeah, but like this poor guy, like because his dad had died when he turned 18, he inherited a bunch of money, and he was living in a part of Ohio, real close to a university town that was just heavy into drugs, and
Mm.
he got heavy into drugs, and he got a whole bunch of money, so then he got even heavier into drugs. He injured himself on a job or something, and started getting these pain patches. He would put on his back, and they were supposed to like release medicine to help like with the pain that he had,
Fuck.
but he
Yeah.
started like cracking them open and like mainlining the medicine.
Ah,
Um, and he got a bubble and died like instantly.
fuck.
Yeah, and he was like a real
Fuck.
close friend of mine. We hadn't talked for a long time, but I mean, back in the day, we had been like, bestest friends in the
Right.
world, sort of thing. So I wrote that tune about him. His name was Daniel Marquis, spelled a different way, but the tune's called Marquis, and it's really about him. Um, I was so pleased with how that tune came out, in part because I had really developed an affinity for, not an affinity, I don't know if that's the right word. I had gotten real interested in like prog metal because
Right.
of Tim Wilderoder, who was in Figurehead, the bass player in Figurehead. He and I
Oh,
became
okay.
really close friends and started to work together on tunes. So like that section in Marquee, the weird progressive section, he wrote most of that, and then like other stuff like like in Carrion, he wrote some of the like off-tempo variations of the melodies and stuff in that tune. So those two tunes I'm very proud of, Marquee and Carrion. And they were like Tim and Alex joints, you know. So when basically what happened with Figurehead was in the end we had 4 guys. Tim had to move to like central Pennsylvania, and Mark moved to the West Coast. And it had nothing to do with the band. It was just like kind of like life changes, you know?
Yeah.
So then it was just like me and Dave, and he was in Youngstown and I was in Cuyahoga Falls, and I was driving an hour, sometimes twice a week. And it's just like, you know, maybe we're done. No hard feelings. So I hadn't done anything for, and that was 16. We released that album, 2016. I hadn't done anything for a little while, and I just started kind of like playing piano a lot more.
Okay.
Trying to learn stuff on piano. I don't really play piano, but like, you know, when you write, I had always found that when I wrote a tune on piano, it was a bigger hit with musicians. So like, if I wrote the tune on the piano and brought it to the band, they would like it more than if I had written it on the guitar and brought it to the band. And that was just real clear to me. I had been playing a lot of piano, and I wrote the riff for the tune called Dream in a Nightmare's Place on the new record, Johnny. And that just kind of became a song. And then I thought of him as I began to write the lyrics, and it just snowballed into a whole piece. So John, to get back to your original question, he was my exact age, and back in the day when we were like in the probably 5th grade or something, his grandmother lived down the street from my grandmother. And like when we were on the weekends staying with grandma so mom and dad could go do whatever, we would hang out and like play in the front yard, baseball, kickball. There was a pool table in his grandma's basement, and like, you know, we were just always hanging out. But like we went to different schools and whatever. So fast forward like 20 years, and I'm maybe even 30 years. I'm in Cincinnati one time, and I go into a Skyline Chili, and there's a dude working there, and like he looked just like John, and I'm like, who is this kid? He's too young to be John. So I asked him, I was like, do you know John? And he's like, yeah, that's my brother. And I was like, oh. And I remembered this is like the little kid who ran around when I would go, you know, spend the night at his house and play video games all night. This is his little brother, grown up. He's like, you should go see him. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, where is he? He's like, well, we all live down at my grandma's house now, which is the house that I played at. I knew exactly where it was.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's go down there, get out, and I'm like standing on this street at this house, and it's like surreal. It's where the line. I stood right here on this old street a million years ago.
Right.
Like,
okay.
That's me standing there looking at this
That's the
house.
moment.
And his mom's like unloading groceries. So I walk up and say, hey, do you remember me? She did. Like, hey, I saw Jake at the Skyline there, and he told me to come down and say hi. She's like, okay, hold on a second. She brings me in the house, and she has me wait in the doorway.
Okay.
It's weird.
Yeah.
She goes into the room where he and I used to like play Nintendo, and like where I would sleep on the floor, you know, whatever, when we had sleepovers and stuff, and like closes the door, comes back out and says, okay, you can go in. And I'm like, it's weird, but okay. Walk in there, and there he is, man, skinny and in a wheelchair. And I'm like, what the hell? He's just very frail, fucked up, you know?
Right.
I knew that he had drug problems and stuff over the years, because I had like ran into him here and there or heard stuff about him. I guess what happened was he had got appendicitis.
Fuck. Yeah.
And he had gone to the hospital complaining, and they turned him away because they thought he just was trying to get drugs.
Right.
So then his appendix ruptured, and it fucked up his body real bad. Like did additional damage to his body. He was like airlifted to the hospital, and the result was that he was so fucked up, in fact, that he was in a wheelchair and had like a piss bag, you know, like the whole 9 yards. And it just stuck in my head, this whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, about midway through writing the album, I looked him up, and he died. He ended up dying. I had not had an opportunity to get back in touch with him.
Right.
I described some of this in the record. If you listen to the words, like, he wasn't real forthcoming. He didn't really want to talk. Like, I offered to like bring a 6-pack around to hang out. He couldn't drink. I was like, well, like, what can we do? He doesn't really do anything. I tried to call, to just say what's up. Didn't return my call. And yeah, so it just always kind of hung around in the back of my mind. And as I started to write these words, it's not an uplifting album.
No, but it puts you in that. That's why music, ideally, we're gonna convey something, right? And this
Yeah.
album conveys this dude's journey, or at least your adaptation of it. You know what I mean? And it puts you in that, and like everything about it, from like the narrative to the sonically, the chord progressions, like it does such a good job of conveying this. And like if you're looking at that cover, that's the fucking vibe it puts you in. When you re-met
Yeah.
with him initially, was he stoked to see you, or was he just kind of out of it and was like, "What's up?" You know what I mean? Like,
I
from that,
think he was depressed and he didn't
Right.
want to see anybody, much
Gotcha.
less
was this super
blacks
fresh
from the
when you
past.
ran into him?
What do you
Like,
mean?
did that just
Oh,
happen?
had he been injured recently?
Yeah. Or has he been living like that for a while? Then when you re-caught up with him?
I don't think it had been. I think like it had happened in maybe the last year,
Okay.
but I don't think it was like 2 weeks
Week of.
after or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, like it was just so strange because so much emotionally for me, like being in that house, being on that street. My grandma didn't live there anymore. She was dead. Um, and his grandmother was dead. His grandfather was dead. His dad was dead. His mom was
Yeah.
alive. And his sister was living there with a bunch of kids that I had never met. And apparently his little brother, when he wasn't working at Skyline, was also. I mean, it was like a bad situation for all of them.
Right.
Made worse by the fact that he was not only like injured in this way and like but dying essentially.
Yeah.
I didn't really realize how grave it was until after he died, and I was like, I had a hard time finding anything about it. There are some moments like here and there. Like one of the things I describe in the narrative is, and I can't think of like the exact lyric, but like there was this one time that I went to his house, his family's house, and I had seen him. I had reached out to him and was like, hey, let's get together. And I went to not his grandmother's house, but his mom and dad's house. And this would have been like when we were like 21 or something. And he was like excited to see me, and he had a girlfriend who was like too young, and like he had like a handle of Jack Daniels, and he proceeded to polish this thing off in front of me.
Yeah.
And like before my eyes went from like my friend to this like completely blacked out like insane person. And at one point he was yelling about how nobody better mess with his girl, who was sitting right there, except if it was me, meaning Alex.
Yeah.
Like that's okay because you're my boy, you're my friend, whatever, like as if I'm gonna like
do that,
what I mean? and of course like his girlfriend is like practically crying in the corner
Right,
as she's watching this all happen,
having to deal with this shit. Like, fuck. Like,
yeah.
oh man.
The opening track of the song of the album, I saw
prelude?
him once long after I was gone. He said, "You can take my girl after drinking alone."
Okay, there it is.
So that's
Yeah.
that line. Yeah.
That's such a good way to put
So
it.
you're right. There's a lot of like, yeah. I mean, I worked really hard on this album. I mean,
Clearly.
when I was in jam bands, it was like, I wanted to play this. I really approached songwriting when I was in jam bands the way comedians approach, like, working out new jokes and shooting a comedy special. If you listen to like, Anthony Jeselnik or really any comedian, like they'll say, I write a bunch of jokes. I take them out on the road for a year. At the end of that year, when they're all tuned up and as perfect as they're going to be, I shoot the special, and then that's what
Right.
airs on TV. So people see the perfect versions.
Yeah.
That was how I approached like recording in a jam band. Let's just write the tunes, get them out on the road. When we have enough for an album, and we feel like they're all
Tip top.
you know,
Yeah.
right. and we'll go record them.
That's a good way to put it. I listen to a lot of comedians talk and I always
But
think about that. But sorry, keep going. But
no, that's yeah. Like Jeselnik's a good one for listening to him talk about that. Um, and I like Anthony Jeselnik a lot.
yeah, he's good. He's good.
Uh, but with this album, I had always been encouraged. I got to credit Nate Doubt from Central 8 Studios in Akron. He's part of Diamond Kites, which is Jeff Clem's band
Oh,
now.
okay, cool.
Nate's just a fantastic dude, and he always would get frustrated with me because I didn't want to do stuff in the studio that I couldn't do on stage. And I was real particular about that. Like, we can double the guitar, we can double the vocals, but I don't want a guitar track over here that people aren't going to hear when they come see us live. Like,
Right.
you know, like Pink Floyd would have a million tracks, but then when you saw them live, they'd have like a 15-piece band so they could pull off every piece, you know.
Right.
I didn't want to do that. And I knew we weren't going to be able to add extra musicians. For this album, it was like, you know, there isn't a live band. There's just me in my house, you know, after everybody's asleep, playing piano and writing lyrics and, you know, playing guitar and stuff. And I just was like, I can do anything I want. It was liberating. So, I mean, I spent probably 6 months writing all the songs and demoing them out. Like with the primitive equipment I have, like GarageBand and like a bass and a guitar and like a MIDI keyboard, you know, programming drums, whatever. And kind of getting a sense of what I wanted the sounds to be. Like, I want to have a Mellotron, you know, on a lot of this. Like, I want that King Crimson vibe alongside the Pink Floyd vibe and alongside the, you know, the Jackson Browne vibe that is even there. But, once I had that all done, it took me another like year and a half to get everything recorded,
Right.
mastered. And I had the idea for the cover. I had a photographer in my city here, who, you know, came and took pictures of a kid I know who's like a Kent State student, with like a messy, you know, teenager's room. I borrowed a wheelchair from a freaking funeral home who keeps them there
shit.
for the
Yeah,
cancer
yeah.
club.
Right.
Like, got
Fuck.
a graphic artist, you know, who had designed stuff for like a political organization that I was involved with to do the work for the cover art. I got a new logo from a buddy in Cincinnati. I mean, I really took my time and was like, it'll be done when it's done. And I had
Right.
never done that, you know?
Okay. Not in that crunch. Allows it to
Yeah.
fully bake.
Yeah. And then, so, yeah, it was Black Friday 2020. I dropped it. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's well. One, I thought the cover was an actual picture of the guy, but the cover conveys that much emotion.
No,
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's in a way that's more cool because that, like, you got to shape the narrative even like based on the music, as opposed to vice versa. As opposed to basing the music off this image, like this image is based off what the music conveys. And I think
Yeah.
it's every aspect of this is so well done. I can't
Thank you so
remember.
much.
The reason I brought Pink Floyd into it was like there's that fretless bass. Was that
Oh,
you
yeah.
playing it? Who's playing the fretless bass on
Yeah.
that?
Tim's playing bass on
Okay.
everything. I don't know if I mentioned that, but Tim from Central Pennsylvania recorded everything out there and sent it
Sick.
in. And then I got Zach, the first drummer of Alex Hall's Figurehead, to come and do the drums.
Okay.
And then I played all the guitars, most of the keyboards, and sang everything. And then I had a keyboard player who did a couple of things
Right.
for me, but mostly I ended up doing everything. Keyboard wise, some of it was like programmed, like I played it and then fixed it and then, you know, sent MIDI files to the studio to like use better sound. So I mean, it's not as organic as I would like to say it is, but you know,
You're in the studio. You're allowed to use studio magic. You know what I mean? That's it's an art itself. Well, if you're
That's
in
true.
there, it should sound like it came out of the studio. You know what I mean? It sound like it took all that time. It should sound like it. You know, and it does. You know what I mean? But it's okay to like accept that I took this much time and put a bunch of shit into it, and it sounds like I did.
yeah, well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad it does. I really like it's the most I'm the most proud of this, of anything I've ever done musically or artistically, period, end of story. I mean, it it really was just a delight to go through the process and really just, allow myself the time, like you say, to make it what I want, and to be willing. Sometimes you're in a studio and the sound engineer is just like, fuck man, it doesn't need to be like, it's fine, it's fine. But I
Right.
was like able this time to be like, no, I want to take the time,
Right.
and because curated the cover art by, I got to give a lot of credit to Stephen Muley, the photographer who took the picture. He's a phenomenal photographer to begin with, and he really brought his artistic eye to my idea.
Right.
And then it was like me and him standing there, and then my friend Patrick Catnese, who's the actual model,
Okay.
sitting in this wheelchair that I borrowed from the funeral home here in Cuyahoga Falls. And I mean, we're like going, okay, we got to take that off the wall. We got to move some shit around, make the bed look messed up. Like,
Right.
it was really me kind of like going, okay, now I like it. So let's take the pictures, then we'll process them. And I had a couple different graphic artists who did some of that. And just, it was never right. I mean, it was
Right.
like the first time in my life I like hired graphic artists, paid them to do stuff, and then didn't use it because it wasn't right. Um,
So,
you
I'm
know,
sick of doing this my own. Let's get someone to do it right. Fuck, I gotta do
right.
it.
Well, I mean, I was just like, I understand your own limitations,
Right.
and,
No,
and
no.
you know, and
It's
I like, and it wasn't even just that; it was like all of that, but combined with, having. I mean, I was lucky to work with Pete Revere from Amprian Recorder in Youngstown, which is like a 30-year-old studio. Dude is incredible. You had a guy on the show from who you talked about the Dead Boys, like Pete.
what did I talk about that? Oh, I talked about the Dead Boys with. I remember like oh shit, I don't remember. Oh, was it
Guy that was in Black Flag
okay,
briefly.
Descend. Yeah, Bill Stevenson's. I was gonna say
Yeah,
I've brought up the Dead Boys a lot recently. But anywho, keep going, Pete.
yeah. Dead Boys. I think Dead Boys might have come up in your with Rhodes too. But like, so Pete has like he played with guys I think who were like maybe in the Dead Boys,
Okay, cool,
and like were eventually in another band, and he still plays with them. They tour, they like go to Europe and stuff. So Pete's like
sick.
a busy musician,
Right.
but he's also a fantastic, sound engineer, especially for rock music. And like getting great guitar sounds. I actually recorded all the guitar sounds on a Kemper.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Fuck
which he
it.
has in studio.
Yeah.
Uh, and really like looked. I call him a co-producer because he helped me with a lot of the sounds. He helped me with a lot of like the little intricacies. And then he mixed everything, and we spent one session on every tune. So like I would hours per
Yeah.
tune.
Yeah.
Uh, and then when that was all done, I went to Adam Booth at Cauliflower Audio in Cleveland, who I understand had apparently at one point remastered like a Lynyrd Skinner box set or something. I mean,
Huh.
dude masters all kinds of stuff from
That's
all
sick.
over the like spectrum too.
Right.
So,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
so yeah, it was really about like utilizing professionals, to be able to execute what I wanted to execute, and spending time and making this record that I think really conveys the emotion I want to convey, even if it's sad.
Right. But that's
um,
with the kind of speak on that. It's important to know your limitations, like you said, and utilize who can ever make whose skill set best suits that. Because I feel like nowadays, like everything is so DIY.
yeah,
Everyone's learning how to record everything on their own and do everything themselves. But there's so much of that learn time to make that thing. You almost lose that chance to really convey what you're trying to convey because you're learning the
yeah,
steps along the way. And like, so if you can just focus on the art thing and use your friend's ability to like make it sound sweet, and then they're involved too. Now they're invested. Now this one project that you were so like focused on and stoked to do becomes this your one friend has a little bit of focus in that too, and now it expands from that, and it ultimately I think makes a better product, not product, but better a better art, a better way that your uh, what you're being said is amplified or crafted, like, and it makes it brings that same thing you were going, that initial intent, you get to share that with more than just yourself. And like like it's only specific people because only specific skill sets you need to do it. And it's so I
yeah,
don't know, it's so under like not too many people do it now. A lot of people bite the bullet and do it themselves, which is cool. But also, it's great to share shit with people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was always the guy in the studio saying to the engineer like not an audiophile. I'm not going to be able to tell, the difference between subtle things. So
Same,
I'm
same.
paying you to do that. Like,
Right.
yeah. I mean, and and it's not about money. Like what the fuck ever. Like I just want people who are good at what they do to, to do that thing
Yeah.
that they're good at doing.
And help you
And
do it right.
yeah, and I mean, and I'm happy to pay somebody for their work, if I can afford it, which I usually could
Key.
not.
Key.
Um, yeah, but that was kind of, I guess that was part of like being able to take my time on this record too. Was just like not having to like have all the money up front, like just demoed everything out, brought it in, and then it's like, oh, it's the drummer's turn, so let's play everything but the drums. So cut the drums out, put the click on, let him do it. Okay, now we got the drums. Let's correct any errors there might be. Okay, now we've got perfect drums. Let's put the guitars on.
Fuck.
You know,
Yeah.
so I did all the rhythm guitars anyway. Did all the rhythm guitars. Did as much of the lead guitars as I could. Sent that all out to the bass player, who then added the bass. Sent the tracks in. Put that all in. Then did the key. I mean, it was like so like, and I mean, there would be times, and of course the pandemic like froze a lot of this too.
Yeah.
There would be times I'd wait like 2 months between sessions. Um, and then there were times where I was doing like a session. I think toward the end, I actually did like 2 or 3 sessions per week. And he's in Youngstown. I'm driving an hour. So I mean, it was very much a labor of love, which is such a cliche term, but it really was. It was like
Right.
I wanted to make this thing. And I felt like I needed to tell this story, and I was ready to put out music. And I got really into like, I mean, I said earlier I'm out of the jam band scene. Like it's not just like it's not like anything against those people or that music or anything like that. I got more interested in other music. I went through this huge thing where I was into Screaming Headless Torsos, which is like a New York City avant like funk rock band. They're like jazz metal almost, and like that dude played a 7-string guitar. And I started playing 7 strings.
Whoa.
So everything on this record is played on a 7.
How much did that fuck up what you knew? Like, because adding the extra low definitely changes everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I do it in drop A, so it's
Okay.
like the
Another
equivalent of drop D in a regular guitar. But like that tune, it's called Between, or what the hell? It's like I don't even remember my own music.
Well, I mean, we've been covering a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the years
Let me see if I
between
can pull up.
the years between is track 3 on Johnny, and it's like there's like these real like deep chords in that tune, and that's all because of the 7. And everything else almost has like, there are these moments like on John Now even where like when the solo comes in, there's like these big fucking chunk chords that are happening behind everything.
Right.
People think of a 7-string guitar and they're like, oh, you're playing metal. No. But I mean, there's certainly an edge to this music that I didn't have in my music before. It's an advancement of the sound that you got on Carrion from me and from the guys that were in the band at that time. But, I really embraced the 7. And but then after, being into Screaming Headless Torsos and stuff, I was into a lot of like prog metal. I got super into this band called Haken, who are insanely good, and I still listen to their music all the time. A lot of the prog metal bands, though, like they're all trying to sound like the same thing. It's a lot like that post-rock stuff that happened as a result of like emo kind of like breaking down.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's a lot of like guys like tap in, and it's all instrumental, and it's like, that stuff's cool, but like my issue with a lot of that music is that like the subtleties between the bands are so narrow that like it's hard to even tell, it's like they all just sound the same. And so I really tried to be thoughtful about that on this record. Like I wasn't making a prog metal album because I don't play prog metal. I wouldn't know where to begin. I couldn't even get the tone that they get on instruments, but like I was real cognizant of like, well, let me make sure that the tunes are in different keys and that they're, that I've got different like time signatures. Like there's a tune in 5, there's a tune in in 3. There are tunes in 4. There are tunes in 7. I've even got like
Yeah.
in Dream in the Nightmare's Place. There's like measures of 9, like tucked between measures of 7 and stuff. And it was all in service of the music, not
Right. Not
just
just for the skill set, but to convey the narrative.
yeah, it wasn't arbitrary. Yeah, but I mean,
Right.
it was like I was really thinking about a lot of that stuff. And so between trying to tell the story and trying to make a record that was like, I want to say epic, not like in the sense like, oh, dude, it's totally epic. No, like I wanted to make an epic sort of thing, and I think it feels that way, emotionally, dramatically. Like it's got the vibe that I wanted it to have, and I'm just like I said, I'm real pleased. I want people to listen to it because of like I want people to like see like especially people who know me from Oliver Hall. Like I'd
Right.
love for those people to hear this music and understand, where I've ended up. You know,
Right. Right. And I
uh,
bet they would hear where it's starting from. You know what I mean?
maybe
I
yeah, maybe
did.
you might be better to talk about that because I guess if you listen to all this stuff recently,
Yeah, I did kind of a deep dive, and like as far as thematically, maybe not, but like songwriting wise, you know what I mean? Like verse and chorus, it's not. It's you can gradually see the more like how you're saying how you got vague to specific, but you know, there was almost I was talking with this guy from the band Josh Carter from the Smoking Popes. Are you familiar with
okay,
that band? They're like a pop punk
uh-uh.
band from the '90s, and like their whole thing was like he crooned, like right. So he was in this pop punk
Okay,
band, but he was crooning in a way, and it fit, and like, but it started off as kind of a comedic thing. He was doing it to be kind of silly, but it worked. You know what I mean?
huh?
And like, there's this weird comedic cushion. There's this weird like, if there's this vague thing, kind of like, in the way that no one knows exactly what you mean, you're more comfortable doing it. You know what I mean? Like maybe the arbitrary, like, not arbitrary, but maybe like the vagueness of something allows you to start to express yourself in a way that's more genuine to hone it into a specific thing. And I think through our
Hmm.
conversation so far, you've kind of narrated that. You know what I mean? What
Okay,
and like so it became like how you're saying you're being political but vaguely, and maybe no one will understand it but you, and
yeah,
like but the more you do that, it's like comforting because you get used to putting your opinions out there and having people be like, yeah, this room's packed, this is sick, singing along, doing your
yeah,
Slayer bit on the mic and getting that response, and like
yeah,
and then eventually getting to the point where you're 100% comfortable with letting someone know exactly how you feel about this specific thing and making a
yeah,
whole album about it. Like, so definitely, I think if we're looking at that narrative track, like, or that progression of writing, it's definitely there, and you kind of walked me through it, like
yeah,
right now, but like right now,
yeah, yeah. I'm nothing if not verbose.
but no, I think it's really cool, and I think
Well,
sorry, I thought we were gonna, but with this writing this. Did this cap that emotion? Like, was it like because that's a heavy thing to see a friend go through, and like it's something you can't just like be like, okay, that happened. You know what I mean? Like, uh, I'd
that's a
imagine
great
like,
question. I I think if I'm being honest with myself, like I was probably feeling pretty shitty when I started to write the music.
yeah,
Like there was an expression of my own emotion in here somewhere, at the jump. And as we know, like as artists, the art helps you deal with whatever shit you have going on. It's an escape like anything else. It's why artists say, I think some have even said on your show, like I have to play. Like I can't. It's therapeutic, you know.
yeah,
Um, and I truly believe that to be the case for me. And I think that when I started to write this stuff, maybe I was in a little bit of a dark place, but it reminded me of this other thing. I don't know that I was particularly like moved by John's story as I was thinking about it initially. Not because I'm a terrible human being, but because like, I hadn't seen him in so long,
right,
and it like we weren't close anymore. But that part of me that would write vague political songs to sort of hide behind poetry. Um, philosophically, I could say what I wanted to say in a way that only I would understand it, so that like I could say what I wanted to say and not have to deal with,
Right.
backlash like you posted.
I'm sure some
You
people
know,
got it though. I'm sure, I mean, it's easy to write it off like that. I'm sure not the, not
yeah,
to talk down on it. I'm sure a bunch of, there's a fair amount of people like, oh, what? I kind of I get that. Wait,
yeah,
and I'm sure you've come across that. But
sure. Well,
sorry.
people also like no, you're fine. People also like get what they want
Right,
from
right. It's the mirror.
lyrics. So I mean,
Yeah.
whether they understood what I was talking about or assumed what they thought I was talking about based on what they heard, it doesn't really matter to me as the songwriter. It's just I do think that there is a certain sense in which like I was hiding behind poetry for those songs. But when I started telling stories, like I'm in this group now called Summit Sky. So what we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah.
The string band, and it's not a bluegrass band; it's a folk band. But it's easiest to describe as bluegrass. I mean, we
Because
have a
the
banjo player,
instrumentation's there. You got the banjo
right?
and the mandolin
It's hardcore bluegrass people would get mad if I called it bluegrass, but
right. Well,
whatever. Um, uh, that band, everything I've written is a story, and I actually just embraced that. So, like, there's a tune about people in the Appalachians, like, and like the sort of bad things that happen to them. There's a tune about like a relationship sort of breaking up and coming back together. There's a tune about when I was a kid living in the country, and like I used to see a barn owl like every time I went walking past the tree line, and you know like developed this like sort of relationship with this owl.
that's cool.
Just a lot of
Yeah.
stuff like that that's been coming out in my writing, that really allows me to like to tell these stories and to be more open.
Right.
Um, so maybe this was all kind of part of that. Um,
It seems like it'd be like a hyper
and
focused
and maybe
version.
some of the
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, sorry.
Well, I guess what I was going to say that was too maybe the emotion was somewhat of my own emotions,
Right.
talking about this other person. So maybe I was kind of hiding behind the story a little bit, but at a certain point, it became all about the story, and it was
Right.
no longer anything to do with me. And every song and every word was about advancing the narrative. Like the
Right.
years between, I wrote "A Dream in a Nightmare's Place" first, which is way later in the album.
Yeah.
But like, John Now, which is like the first, or not, is
It's
it
like
John
the
Now that's
it's
first?
the prelude. It's like the prelude, the chorus. That's why I pulled up my phone to look at the tracks because I didn't put them in my notes.
Yeah. No,
But
John Now is like, so the prelude is like really like, I'm imagining him being like a drug addict and like, trying to hustle his family and people all the time.
yeah,
Like he's up to his tricks again. Worst thing you can do is let him in.
yeah,
Um, but then by John Now he's like in this terrible state. So it's not linear. It's the Quentin Tarantino of concept albums. It's like, it's like non-linear narrative. And then, but the years between was like, the time between us being kids and us um, being kind of grown up and like
going
drifting
your own
apart.
ways. Right.
So that allowed me, some of those songs were really began as like, okay, how do I get from here to here? And then, developing the tune and the lyrics based on that. So it was like writing, I've written a screenplay. I haven't sold it.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice. Congrats.
but whatever, everybody, isn't it a cliche to like live in the 21st century and say you've written a screenplay? If I
No.
said I wrote it in Starbucks, you'd laugh at me. Um,
Maybe a
but I
little
did.
bit. Yeah. I always had a Dewey's coffee. What? Or I don't know. Fill in the blank. Local.
but
But
but I mean, so having been through that exercise in terms of narrative,
right.
I think there's something to be said for like the exercise here of going, okay, I've already said this part of it. I need to say this other part of it, and how do I get there? I need a tune that's going to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And the years between was one of those, and like some of it is just imagined too. Like in Mice in the Basement, like we're in his head. I couldn't know where he was when he
Right.
when his side started hurting and he like didn't go to the hospital because he was too busy, doing drugs or whatever he was doing. But I imagined that, like that tune breaks down into like free sort of, I wouldn't say jazz, but it breaks into
Movement.
chaos.
Oh,
You
free. I gotcha. I thought you said three. I was like, wait. Okay. But yeah. All right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then and then I like the choruses were like the Greek chorus. Like if you ever read like Sophocles, like Oedipus Rex, there's like the chorus that comes out and like tells you like what's happening, and then what happened as a result of the thing that you just saw and what's going to happen now. Like that's what the choruses are in the tune. And
That's
if you notice,
sick.
like the
Yeah.
prelude is like piano, and the interlude is acoustic guitar, but then the postlude is the same song with different lyrics, and instead of being just accompanied by one instrument, it's like the whole fleshed out version of a tune with like a big
Right.
churchy organ solo and stuff. So
It's almost like it's kind of we were talking about Kendrick a little bit, piecing these things together and like
yeah,
putting them, piece by piece, then together.
well, it's like I want to be high, right? Like
Right.
the stuff, those little pieces, full
There we
circle,
go.
man.
But that's the beauty of it. So it is in there.
Yeah,
I
we were
mean,
looking for it. We found it.
we did. We did. Way more in depth than I want to be high. But like,
Yeah, a bit more.
yeah. But I mean, even if you're uh, sharing his story, and sharing his emotion and thought process, because no one knows anyone's thought process, but your
Yeah.
thought process of him, right? And so you just trying to, uh, um, take in the story and share it and convey, even if it is just a narrative based thing, yourself is in that, and especially with all the work and time that went into it, which you can hear. So like, because you kind of to speak upon what you said a little bit ago, I think this couldn't be as impactful as it is if that wasn't there. If it wasn't, even if like that relationship was distant. Like
Hmm.
I don't think it would hit as hard or be as like immediate as soon as you hit play on track one. You get the mood. You know what I mean? I don't think it would hit that hard unless there was like this thing from within you conveyed in this project.
Yeah, yeah, and if my own emotions hadn't been in that neighborhood at one
Right.
point or another too. Yeah, I
Right.
think that's true. They spend a lot of time looking at artists and filmmakers and authors and whoever, and trying to get a sense of like why the stories they tell are the way they are. And we tend to think a lot more now about what it says about them,
Right.
instead of like the old way, which was to like completely ignore you know the artist and focus solely on the art. um, I think this is a lot more. I think that really cuts off your ability to fully understand a work.
Yeah.
I just really want people to hear it. I'm at this place now where I'm like, I'm not writing anything.
Right.
I'm thinking about a lot. I play in another band too. I play bass in another group.
What's the
Uh,
other group?
it's like a just kind of it's a rock trio. They're called the Moderns.
Okay.
Um, they used to be kind of more of a rockabilly thing, and
Okay.
they just all live in my city, and I was kind of like missing playing with drums because the
Right.
other band was a string band. So
How'd
I
that?
don't have
How?
any immediate plans to go ahead. What?
I was gonna say, let's talk about Summit Sky a little bit. How did that come about?
Craigslist. you
Craigslist.
know.
Craigslist. You're like, well, it's interesting because the jam band thing and the bluegrass thing kind of roll together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of, and especially with the Grateful Dead realm, and I understand it now that I've like spent time looking into the Grateful Dead. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm like, well, it doesn't. It's not A then B. You know what I mean? Like, it's A slash B. You know what I mean? There's like they're two different things, but somehow jam band crowd is very accepting of bluegrass crowd, and I don't know if it's the same other way
It's
around.
everything. I mean, I would say that like jam band fans. I mean, you can be any kind of music if you like have that cathartic, feeling and emotion in your music.
Yeah.
It works for them. Most jam band fans that I know like a lot of different kinds of music. But you're right that bluegrass is definitely. You go to a bluegrass festival now, you see a lot of hippies,
Right.
and
Right.
you go to a. But by the same token, in the '70s, you might have gone to a Grateful Dead concert and seen a lot of like sort of hillbillies. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Yeah, you got
I mean,
point.
Jerry Garcia himself was in Old and in the Way playing banjo, and the even like the bikers and stuff like were more into like the rock and roll and stuff back then. Um, I think that jam band fans do. I mean, like electronica is a big thing in the jam band scene now, um, and so like there's definitely a crossover between like a lot of the more successful jam bands now have some element of like dance music going on.
Yeah, definitely,
Um,
definitely.
but certainly they like bluegrass. I just answered a Craigslist ad. To be completely honest with you, I was looking for somebody to play with and thought, like I could go play guitar in an acoustic group if they're just like some dudes who want to play Grateful Dead songs on acoustics, and like if they
Right.
got gigs, like I'll go do it, fine, whatever. Like that was kind of
Okay,
my
so it was
attitude.
just
Shitty, but
chill. But yeah, but it was just like I'm going to go into this and see what happens. No pressure. Coming
it
out
was
of
more
these,
like I can fake my way through acoustic renditions of Grateful Dead songs if
I
that's
get,
what they want to do.
I
As
get.
it turned out, that's not what they were
Okay.
at all.
Well,
So it's much cooler than what I thought it was when I saw the ad. And
nice.
we've been together like 3 years now.
Right.
But
Now you
but yeah,
guys.
it's cool. It's like they're guys who are like and they're like late 40s, sort of maybe early 50s sometimes. And we're down to a four-piece now, so it's like bass guitar, mandolin, and banjo. And we're gonna be playing in Columbiana actually
Nice.
on April 8th. They're doing a cool like socially distanced theater seating kind of a thing. Um, so it's the first gig I've played in a long time.
Shit.
Um, but
You
but
didn't get.
I think I actually played an outdoor gig last summer.
Okay.
So I've done a couple of things like with the Moderns especially, but yeah, some of these guys like they're a lot. They were into like metal. These guys are like they run the gamut between like Rush and like super heavy metal and like Van Halen
Yeah.
and like, but like we're playing all acoustic. So we do some kind of fun covers. We do like Iron Maiden's Run to the Hills and like
Oh, that's sick.
Judas Priest's Breaking the Law. But we also do like Purple Rain and
Yeah, I think I
um,
remember Purple Rain. I don't
yeah, we
remember
might
at
have done it.
Negative Space.
Yeah, we
Um,
might have done it there.
but that's awesome.
Um,
It's such a good outlet in a different way, and the focus. Like it's cool that this songwriting and this narrative writing had a chance to flourish in that type of environment, because that's the type of music.
yeah.
That's what it calls for, and to see it kind of
Oh,
come
really?
together.
Definitely.
You know what I mean with songwriting. That
Yeah,
type of narrative based
totally.
thing is where it's at, and to see it kind of funnel together with Figurehead and Summit Sky into what you've done now with Johnny. I think it's it's like the cream of the crop, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I've given myself enough time to sort of like let all the ingredients cook.
Right.
And actually, some of the guys we have an album that's going to be coming out like pretty soon.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
so and I wrote the lyrics to the majority of the tunes. Um, Although a couple of them were written by other guys in the band, and they're also really good. Like these are good lyricists as well. And they have cool ideas musically. I came into that group and it was like we've got like 30 tunes that we wrote and none of them have lyrics, so we want somebody who will come in and sing and write lyrics and play guitar. And the other guitar player at the time, we had two guitar players, like wasn't real confident with playing solos either. So it was like,
Okay.
most of the solos come from acoustic guitar and banjo, and so I'm playing solos on the guitar, and the banjo player is phenomenally good um, on all instruments. But he's really, really good at banjo, so he shines in the group. And yeah, so I mean, I've written a lot of tunes that are stories there too. I had another friend in Cincinnati who I lost. He was like probably like my best friend, um, and I lost him a couple years ago. And so one of the first tunes I wrote for that band was for him. So there's some emotion in that stuff too. Um, that I think will be familiar to people when they hear that album versus listening to Johnny.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if that's just where I am as a songwriter. I mean, I don't, like I said, I'm not writing anything else right now for Figurehead for Alex Hall's Figurehead, but I think that I probably will start putting something together. I just don't know if it's going to be like, is it going to be like like another thing like Johnny like Carrion, is it going to like keep that trajectory going, or am I going to like do something else? I would love to collaborate with other musicians, to do just some interesting, like different stuff. Like here I've got a beat that's a little bit odd, and I want to see like what you would do with it
Right.
on your instrument. So you add something, and maybe I bounce it to somebody else, and then they add something, and we try and do some. I'm interested in that idea. I haven't been able to make that come together yet. And then Tim and we still talk pretty regularly, and I think that if I had an idea for some songs, he'd be into it. So maybe we'll get some stuff going. But
Nice.
yeah, I mean, I feel really like I'm in a good place musically as a musician. Like I'm happy with this product, and I want to share it. I want people to hear it. I want to, it's on all the like streaming services and stuff. And I'm gonna develop a website that's gonna have all of my music going back as far as I possibly can,
Nice.
and make that kind of
Definitely.
like a hub. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. And just have a hub for all my stuff, and just kind of tell people what I'm up to, even if I'm doing other stuff, like if I'm writing a screenplay, or
Right.
if I take up watercolors or something. Like, it's
Well,
not likely to happen, but
you never know. But fuck, when you get into things, especially when
Yeah.
we're locked down like we are now. But
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Well, I think I definitely more people got to hear this project because it's fucking awesome, and like you can tell that so much work and time and love has gone into it. So I hope the listeners from this go straight to that and check it out. I usually
Yeah.
man, we've been at it for a minute. How do you feel? I think we
Yeah,
did
we've been
good.
on for a while.
I think we
Yeah.
did good.
I can talk. There's
No, I
I can
love
do
it.
anything else.
I love it, man.
Well, if like I could just tell people, like, if you're on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, just Alex Hall's Figurehead. The record's called Johnny. And then I'm on Facebook, at I don't know. Do people use links for Facebook pages? I don't think they do, but I'm pretty sure it's
I put
just.
them in with each
Oh,
episode.
oh, cool.
Usually, like on the YouTube video or the site, the podcast site. I usually put everyone's info on that. You guys
Cool. Yeah.
had a
There's
website, but I couldn't get to it. Couldn't get those
What's that?
deets. I think there was an Oliver Hall website. And
Oh yeah, it's been a while, man. There's stuff on YouTube. Like
Yeah.
there's a playlist, or I have a playlist on my YouTube channel that's got all the stuff that I did for Oliver Hall.
Gotcha.
In one place. And then I think all the Figurehead stuff is out there too. And then I have a playlist for Johnny that's like, front to back in
Right.
order. So if you don't have streaming service, you can do that. It's also on Bandcamp, and Bandcamp has all the like liner notes.
Right.
So like a lot of the
Bandcamp's where
stuff we
it's at.
talked about today, is in like I typed it in, on Bandcamp. So if you really want to get inside my head, you can can read that stuff. But yeah, I hope people listen to it, and I'm looking forward to. So it's been out since November, so it's kind of old now to me,
Right.
just because I spent so much time with it. But
Right. But
I spent more time on it than it has been out. So
right. Well, usually that's the case. Like, and I don't know. Like now with like the rate of stuff coming out isn't as quick. You know what I mean? As pre-COVID. So like, it's like there is stuff coming out, but a lot of the records that are coming out now are about being locked up with nothing to do.
yeah, well, but then again, the tone of this record certainly like accompanies like
It does. But
the pandemic depression.
yeah, it does. But it's not. It's different.
But it wasn't written during the pandemic.
No,
It just was.
That's awesome. Well, hey man, thanks
Yeah.
so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah,
I'm
dude. I want to say thank you, like, for having me on the show, but also thank you for making the show. I thought there would be a lot more shows about local musicians out there in this area. There's not. There's only like 2 that I really even found. A couple of things that are like smaller, maybe like a quick feature or something. But like having somebody like you making a show like this to give musicians like me an opportunity to come here and talk. Here I am talking on a podcast. I had a dude who Black Flag, Matt Rhodes from Tropodelic, which is nationally famous, and me, who like I'm not really doing anything except releasing albums like that maybe nobody ever listens to. So thank you for having me, but also
Of
just
course.
thank you for for making a show like this that really just there need to be shows like this. And so thank you for being the dude who makes that happen, like, for real.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I really do. The kind of this all started from Negative Space, and like I
Nice.
kind of just trying to hear everybody out and give everyone a platform. And like I guess maybe this is the same way too. I've never really thought of it like that until hearing you say that. So I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out.